You're looking at a muscle car. It carries a GM a 325 horsepower 396 V8, and it rolled off a General Motors assembly line. But you won't find it in any American catalog ever printed. The badge doesn't exist south of the border. The brand erased. The network that sold it gone. Between 1962 and 1969, Canada had its own muscle cars, a parallel GM world. America never knew existed. What killed them wasn't failing sales, it was a single trade agreement. And the story begins with a $2,300 compact that was neither Pontiac nor Chevrolet. In 1962, a new name appeared in Canadian showrooms, a car that didn't fit any American catalog. The Acadian was introduced with a base price of $2,383, a figure that would have caught the eye of any family on the hunt for something modern, affordable, and just out of reach for neighbors across the border. The price wasn't just a number, it was a quiet signal. This car was not for export, not for American roads, and not for Chevrolet's own dealers. It was a Canadian original, and GM wanted everyone to know it. The Acadian launch wasn't a typical corporate rollout. Dealer brochures and press releases called it a completely new automobile line developed by General Motors. That phrase echoed through showroom literature and owner's manuals, setting the Acadian apart from anything else in North America. The message was clear. This was not a rebadged Chevy or a Pontiac in disguise. It was a standalone brand, assembled at Oshawa, built for Canadians, and sold only through Pontiac Buick dealers. Chevrolet outlets were left out by design. The exclusion wasn't an oversight. It was a deliberate move by GM's planners to protect the Pontiac Buick network after the US Pontiac Tempest disappeared from Canadian showrooms. The Acadian's price point slotted it just above the cheapest American compacts, but with Canadian-specific styling and a badge that never appeared south of the 49th parallel. The $2,383 MSRP wasn't just a marketing line. It was baked into the dealer brochures and owner's manuals, confirming that the Acadian was more than a regional oddity. GM Canada made sure the price appeared in official documents, locking in the Acadian's place as a genuine entry in the Canadian market. No discounts, no cross-border deals, and no confusion about which showrooms could carry it. Pontiac Buick dealers now had a compact to call their own. The Chevrolet too was already in the hands of Chevy dealers, and GM's internal memos made it clear. The Acadian would not be offered to Chevrolet franchises under any circumstances. This was about more than just selling cars. It was about protecting dealer territory, maintaining profit margins, and giving Canadian buyers a sense of ownership over a car that was theirs alone. Public advertisements played up the exclusivity. Available only at your Pontiac Buick dealer, the brochures read, with no mention of Chevrolet anywhere in the fine print. The Acadian's arrival filled a gap left by American policy and Canadian demand, a car built for a market that didn't want to settle for leftovers. For a brief moment, Canadian buyers had access to something Americans couldn't get at any price: a GM muscle car with its own name, its own badge, and a secret handshake between dealer and driver that only made sense north of the border. 8 distinct body styles, 2 trim levels, and a badge unknown to anyone south of the border, this was the shape of Canada's secret muscle car world in 1962. The Acadian lineup wasn't just a token offering. It arrived as a complete matrix, mapped out in official dealer brochures with a precision that left nothing to chance. Buyers could choose between the Invader, the entry-level trim, and the Beaumont, which carried the upscale torch. Each trim unlocked 4 different body styles: 2-door sedan, 4-door sedan, 2-door hardtop, and 4-door wagon. That meant 8 unique configurations on day 1, all stamped out at Oshawa and all wearing a badge no American had ever seen in a Chevrolet or Pontiac showroom. The Invader name promised value and Canadian-built reliability. Its script appeared along the fenders, understated but proud. For those willing to spend more, the Beaumont offered richer trim, more chrome, and a sense of quiet prestige. The Beaumont badge shimmered on the grille and tailgate, a subtle nod to the French-Canadian heritage GM wanted to honor. No other GM compact anywhere came with this exact combination of body, trim, and nameplate. Every Acadian, regardless of trim, wore a standalone badge. The maple leaf motif was more than decoration. It was a statement. Brochures displayed the emblem with careful artistry, framing it as a symbol of national pride. The grille split was distinctive, echoing Pontiac's design language, but adapted for Canadian tastes. The Acadian's script, flanked by maple leaves, announced its identity every time the car rolled down Main Street or pulled into a curling rink parking lot. These touches weren't shared with any Chevrolet 2, Nova, or American Pontiac. They belonged to Acadian alone. The 8-model spread gave buyers a rare sense of choice. A young family might drive home in an Invader wagon, groceries piled in the back, and a new badge on the driveway. A retiree could pick a Beaumont hardtop, enjoying extra trim and the quiet satisfaction of owning a car that didn't exist in any American catalog. Each configuration had its own model code, its own place in the sales literature, and its own entry in the Oshawa plant's production logs. This wasn't a regional afterthought or a rebadge for the sake of paperwork. The Acadian's full matrix, 2 trims, 8 bodies, a badge and grille found nowhere else, gave Canada a car line as real and as varied as anything in Detroit's playbook. Yet outside the country, the names Invader and Beaumont might as well have been code words. For a few short years, Canadian drivers could order a car that looked familiar, but was, in every detail that mattered, their own. The scale of the offering set the stage for what would soon become a split in the lineup, and the birth of a true Canadian muscle car identity. In 1964, GM of Canada set its engineering teams a challenge: build 2 distinct cars for 2 dealer networks, all under one roof. The Oshawa plant became the stage for a rare experiment in North American manufacturing. On one side was the Acadian, a compact built on a 110-inch wheelbase, essentially the Canadian version of the Chevrolet Nova. It was nimble, economical, and already a familiar sight for buyers who wanted practicality and city-friendly proportions. On the other side, engineers prepared the Beaumont, stretched to fit the Chevelles' 112-inch A-body chassis. This longer platform promised more space, a smoother ride, and the kind of muscle that Pontiac Buick dealers needed to compete with Chevrolet's own Chevelle offerings. The technical split ran deeper than just wheelbase measurements. Oshawa's tool room invested heavily, commissioning dual sets of stamping dies, one for the Acadian's compact panels, another for the Beaumont's longer, wider bodywork. Each grille, fender, and badge required its own design and tooling. The retooling costs climbed into the millions, a significant commitment for a market as small as Canada's. Yet the logic was clear. 2 distinct models, each tailored to its own dealer network, could capture a broader spectrum of buyers without forcing anyone to compromise. Inside the plant, the complexity was visible. Production logs from 1964 show both 110-inch and 112-inch wheelbase cars moving down the same assembly line. a feat of scheduling and logistics that Detroit rarely attempted. Underneath, the Acadian and Beaumont shared many components: suspension parts, engine options, even some interior trim to keep costs manageable. But the differences were unmistakable. The Beaumont's split grille, adorned with a maple leaf crest, marked it as unmistakably Canadian. Its badge would never appear on an American Chevelle. Dealer bulletins from March 1964 outlined the strategy. Pontiac Buick dealers would offer the mid-size Beaumont, a car that could stand shoulder to shoulder with any American intermediate. Chevrolet dealers would continue with the compact Acadian, ensuring that every buyer had a clear choice and every franchise kept its territory. For Canadian families, the Beaumont's 112-inch wheelbase meant more legroom and a smoother highway ride, while the Acadian's 110-inch base kept fuel bills low and parking simple. This dual-track approach was more than a workaround. It was a statement of Canadian engineering ambition. For a brief window, Oshawa's plant produced a lineup that existed nowhere else in North America. 2 wheelbases, 2 sets of tooling, 1 facility, a product range tailored to Canada's unique market. As the Acadian and Beaumont rolled out, each told the world it was something different. A Canadian original, engineered for a market that demanded both thrift and muscle, and built with a level of complexity that few dared to match. On January 16, 1965, a single signature on government stationery changed the fate of every Canadian-built Acadian and Beaumont. In Ottawa, Prime Minister Lester Pearson and U.S. Secretary of Commerce Luther Johnson leaned over the Canada-US Automotive Products Agreement, what would become known as the Auto Pact. The ink was barely dry when the old rules vanished. Tariffs that once shielded Canadian cars from American competition were wiped away in a single clause. The border, once a steel curtain for auto parts and finished vehicles, became almost invisible overnight. The official text ran to dozens of pages, but one sentence cut deeper than any line of code or chrome. From that day forward, any car assembled in Canada could cross into the United States without a penny in duties, so long as at least 75% of its value was sourced from Canadian labor or parts. The 75% rule was a double-edged sword. It promised jobs for Canadian workers, but it also demanded that every model justify its existence in a new borderless marketplace. Inside GM's offices, the reaction was swift. Internal memos circulated through the halls of Oshawa and Detroit. The logic was cold and mathematical. With tariffs gone, the cost advantage of building unique Canadian models evaporated. The Acadian and Beaumont, once protected by policy, now faced the full weight of corporate rationalization. Why invest in separate tooling, badges, and dealer literature for a market that could now be served by U.S. spec Chevrolets and Pontiacs, shipped north with zero penalty? A confidential GM Canada report dated February 1965 spelled it out. Model rationalization must proceed. Unique Canadian models are no longer economically sustainable under the new tariff regime. The same memo flagged the 75% content rule as a lifeline for Canadian assembly jobs, but a death sentence for badge-engineered brands that couldn't be exported south in volume. For the Acadian and Beaumont, the paradox was immediate. Their Canadian identity, once a selling point, became a liability. Every grille, every maple leaf badge, every trim piece that set them apart now threatened their survival. The cost of producing Canadian-only sheet metal and trim for such a small market could no longer be justified. The plant's production planners began to phase out orders for unique dies and molds. The lines on the factory floor that once ran 2 sets of stampings one for the Acadian, one for the Beaumont, now faced a mandate to consolidate. Outside the boardrooms, the news filtered down to dealers and workers. Pontiac Buick showrooms that had built their business on exclusivity saw the writing on the wall. The Acadian's secret handshake, the Beaumont's maple leaf crest. These symbols of Canadian pride were suddenly out of step with the new economic reality. The Auto Pact had not just opened the border, it had turned a hidden world into a dead end. In the months that followed, GM's Canadian plants shifted their focus. The Beaumont, once a proud symbol of Canadian engineering, was told to prepare for a new role, survive only if it could fit seamlessly into the North American production matrix. The clock was ticking. The policy that promised prosperity for some would, for others, serve as executioner. The unique Canadian muscle car universe, built in steel and pride, was now being dismantled by the quiet shuffle of paperwork and the cold logic of trade integration. In 1966, GM of Canada drew a line in the sand. Beaumont was no longer just a trim or a sub-model. It became its own mark, with a VIN prefix that had never appeared on a GM car before, the number 7. That single digit, stamped at the front of every Beaumont serial number, set it apart from every Pontiac, Chevrolet, or Oldsmobile on the continent. No American-built Chevelle or LeMans could claim it. The badge on the grille told the rest of the story. A maple leaf, cast in bright metal, flanked the name Beaumont above a split grille that looked familiar but belonged to no U.S. model. Design sketches from GM's Canadian studio show the maple leaf crest taking shape, a quiet defiance in chrome and enamel. The grille's pattern, unique to Beaumont, became a calling card for anyone who knew to look. Even the taillights and dashboard carried details found nowhere else in GM's empire. For a brief moment, the Beaumont wore its Canadian identity like armor. The VIN 7, the maple leaf crest, and the split grille announced to the world that this was a car built for Canadians, by Canadians, and not for export. In a market suddenly flooded with American steel, Beaumont stood its ground, proving that a badge could mean more than just a name. It could be a statement of pride. South of the border, a strange rumor started to spread among muscle car enthusiasts. American Chevelle owners, always on the hunt for something different, began hearing whispers about a Canadian grille, a split design framed with a maple leaf that didn't match anything in Detroit's parts catalog. By 1966, this grille had become a kind of forbidden fruit. Customs ledgers from Buffalo and Detroit show shipments labeled Beaumont Front Assembly arriving at U.S. addresses, each one fetching a premium over standard Chevelle parts. Magazine classifieds in Hot Rod and Road and Track teased, "Get the Canadian look, Beaumont split grille, fits Chevelle, rare import." On weekends, a few enterprising dealers near the border quietly loaded trunks with grilles and trim, selling them to American buyers willing to pay cash and keep quiet. One anonymous trader, known only by the initials JD in a 1968 dealer ledger, moved dozens of grilles each season, never advertising openly, but always in demand. For a brief moment, the flow of muscle car envy ran north to south, Americans chasing a piece of Canadian style. The Beaumont grille became more than a part. It was a badge of underground cool, a secret handshake among those who knew where to look. In the world of muscle cars, rarity always finds its audience, and for a handful of Chevelle owners, the Canadian split grille was the ultimate prize. The Beaumont SD 396 arrived with the kind of numbers that muscle car legends are built on. Under the hood sat a 396 cubic inch V8, officially rated at 325 horsepower, a figure that put it shoulder to shoulder with the Chevelle SS, but with a Canadian passport and a badge Americans had never seen. The SD 396 was more than a spec sheet trophy. It was a secret weapon for drivers who wanted power with a side of exclusivity. Production numbers tell a story of vanishing rarity. In 1967, just 451 hardtop coupes left the Oshawa plant. The following year, only 65 convertibles rolled out. And by 1969, the final tally for SD 396 equipped Beaumonts hovered around 91 units, a whisper compared to the tidal wave of Chevelles pouring out of US factories. Then, almost without warning, it all stopped. 1969 marked the end. GM shut down the Beaumont line, folding its Canadian muscle back into the global assembly line. The SD 396's maple leaf badge faded into memory, erased by a corporate decision that cared more for efficiency than identity. Today, the few that survive are ghosts from a lost world. At a 2022 auction, a pristine SD 396 changed hands for $75,000, more than most American muscle from the same era. For collectors, it's not just the horsepower or the badge. It's the knowledge that this car, once invisible outside Canada, now stands as a monument to a chapter GM tried to close forever. Today, a handful of surviving Acadians and Beaumonts, each with their own Canadian VIN, SD 396 power, and badging no American catalog ever listed, remain scattered across garages and fields. Their story is a reminder. Even in a world obsessed with muscle cars, entire legends can vanish without a trace if policy erases identity. How many other histories are hiding in plain sight? Share your thoughts below.